Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael Pacheco, and today with me, I have Glodean Champion. Glodean is a keynote speaker, author, transformational leader who specializes in personal growth, leadership development, team building, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her approach to this work is with honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability, and she's a master at challenging and captivating audiences of all kinds in a way that forces them to take pause and listen from the heart, something she believes we need more of if we want to make the world a better place. Glodean, welcome to the Remarkable Coach.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with us here. I like to open the podcast, as always, by inviting our guests to just tell us a little bit more about yourself in your own words and what got you into coaching.
So I have been a coach all my life. I feel like even like when I can think of like in my younger days, I was always coaching and advising, sometimes unsolicited, sometimes most times solicited. When I got into corporate America, I was coaching leaders, usually because I was the person that wasn't afraid to speak truth in a way that could be heard. Maybe not everything I said was fully accepted, but it got to a point where people would come back to me and say, okay, remember when you told me X, what did you mean by that? How could I do something differently? And then I got into Lean Six Sigma. And it was in doing that work, which is process improvement work, that I had the kind of biggest role as a coach, because I had to coach the employees to understand and believe that they know the process better than anybody else because they live in it every day. Mm-hmm. And also to get them to believe that their voices and their ideas matter and would be implemented. And then I had to coach the leaders into understanding that the people in the process know the process better than they do, which sometimes is a challenge. So after George Floyd was murdered, I didn't know what was going on in this country because I don't watch the news. I still don't watch the news, but I wasn't watching the news. Right. And I wasn't on social media. So my cousin sent me a text and said they were rioting in her neighborhood. And she lives in an area in Chicago where that didn't even make sense that they would be doing that. And I asked her why. And it was like I said something blasphemous. Like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? And so anyway, she made me go look up George Floyd, and I found out about Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and just all the craziness that was happening in our country that didn't feel like we were in 2020. It felt like we were in some other dimension and time. And I asked the universe, what can I do? Like, what can I personally do to help affect change? And the answer came back, love. And initially I heard it kind of from this, I can go tell people I love them, from a kind of superficial place. And then I kept getting like clarity on, nope, that's not the love we're talking about. Like, this needs to be meaningful love. You need to spread and teach love in a meaningful way. And then all of a sudden these coaching opportunities started coming to me. And I was like, I don't want to be a coach. No, because it felt like everybody became a coach during COVID, right? Mm-hmm. Like, coaches popped up, and I've never been one to want to do what everybody else was doing. Okay. So I was like, how do I distinguish myself from everyone else? And then it became clear, like, it doesn't matter. Like, your job isn't to compare yourself to how many other coaches are out there, or, how you judge the fact that so many people became coaches. Your job is to show up and help people become better versions of themselves. So like, literally was getting people like asking me for coaching advice during this struggle that I was having. And then I finally said, okay, I get it. So I got certified in laser coaching so that I could, get to the crux of the matter a lot faster. And because I had become the kind of answer driven coach, like I would wind up telling my clients what they needed to do to solve whatever the problem was. And laser coaching helped me realize that it's not my job to do that for them, it's their job. So just, a shift in learning enough to be able to understand how to ask the right questions to help people figure out their own problems,
Mhm.
and then be there to support them along the journey. So that was the long and the short of it.
I love it. I love it. You were called to it and you didn't have a choice.
Pretty much.
That's the short version.
Pretty much, yeah. I started to say that, and then I was like, and he'll be like, "Okay, so you want to say more?"
Yeah. No, that's great. And I definitely, so I've been in this business marketing for coaches for quite some time now, and it was June of 2020 that the market, just everyone would get laid off from their jobs, and that market kind of started to flood. And just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't,
Right,
right?
right,
So I think
exactly.
I think you made the right decision.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Me too.
Can you tell us a little bit more about laser coaching? What exactly is that?
So laser coaching helps you get to the root cause
Hmm.
faster. So rather than having, like, I feel like extended coaching engagements kind of peter out 3 months in, because there is a way to cut to the heart of the matter, and it helps the coach focus on the issue the person is dealing with rather than making the person the problem. Like helping people see the issue and then how they're contributing to that issue
Hmm.
is better than, making. Sometimes I think what happens in coaching, at least when before I was like doing laser coaching, when I was in the other space, um, leaders would have employees who complained about the way that they showed up for them.
Hmm.
And rather than that leader looking at themselves, they always, or not always, but they oftentimes wanted me to help them understand what was wrong with their employees. And I was, no, this is internal work. And so helping people just not see feedback as punitive. So laser coaching cuts to the heart of the matter, like I said, faster, so that you can turn a 6-month engagement into a 3-month engagement and have the same results.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Tell us about your clients. Who are your clients? Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client these days are leaders that are leading diverse teams,
Hmm.
leaders that have people from different ethnic backgrounds or gender or sexual orientation, who don't feel like they're connecting with their employees, or they're possibly saying the wrong things. So I have two programs. One is in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space that helps leaders lead diverse teams and be more inclusive, and kind of move through that discomfort of having to tell someone of color, give someone of color some feedback that could be taken the wrong way. So like finding the right way to deliver that message so that it lands with the person in a way that they can receive it. And then I have another program that's called Safe to Ask, and that's for leaders or anyone that works in a diverse environment or is really truly committed to moving through this divisiveness of race and trying to build meaningful relationships with people who don't look like them. And so Safe to Ask is just what it is. It's safe for you to ask me questions
Hmm.
um, that you wouldn't ask someone else because you would be afraid to say the wrong thing. And what I'm trying to help people do is move away from that. I don't want to say the wrong thing, because then how do we ever come together if everybody's walking on eggshells?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about this idea of the delicacy around giving potentially giving feedback that may be taken the wrong way to a BIPOC or by a
Yeah.
person of color.
Um, so I'll just use a recent example. Um, so many examples. um, there was an employee. Well, let me say two things. One is I want people of color to not have to deal with a white person's discomfort,
Hmm.
even if that person is their leader or their coworker, right? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I want people of color to really listen to what's being said, because sometimes people use language that is offensive, not understanding that it's offensive.
Mhm.
Or sometimes we look at how someone is behaving and we take on that behavior as if it's directed at us. Like I understand that when certain people get stressed out, they tend to micromanage. So like understanding who you're dealing with. Like this behavior isn't because I'm Black. It's because this person is stressed out right now, and they
Mhm.
don't just micromanage me, they micromanage everyone. So for the leader who has to talk to someone, and let's say that leader is stressed and not aware of how stress is driving him or
Sure.
her, he's going to approach that person from that place of micromanagement, right? And he's not going to be paying attention to how that message is landing on the person of color, because
Mhm.
I think white people hear things differently than Black people or other people of color because of the whole construct of race and the way that we've been conditioned and engaging with each other, right? So you might hear somebody micromanaging one way, and I might hear it a different way because adding on top of that, I'm a woman, right?
Mhm.
So I'm a Black woman. So it's like a compounded thing. So um, leaders need to learn how to um, check in with themselves. Like, am I having this conversation with this person because it's really necessary? Like, are you only going to that person to give them negative feedback? And then not always necessarily quantifying that feedback is even worth sharing, right? Because everything that you hear about one of your employees doesn't mean you have to go back to the employee. Sometimes you need to check with yourself and go, okay, that person is complaining because, you know, I don't know, somebody cut them off in a meeting. Like,
Mhm.
is that really something you want to take to your employee? Or is that something you can just give the person who's complaining thank you for telling me, and leave it there, right? Unless it's something that's continuously happening. If you're getting the same complaints all the time. But I think what happens is um, you would call it a microaggression, but sometimes uh, leaders focus on their employees of color more, and they give them that negative feedback, but they rarely say you're doing a great job, or any other kind of gratitude and appreciation. Did that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds to me like bad leadership,
Pretty
frankly.
much. Pretty much. But, surprisingly, there's a lot of leaders out there who think they're leaders. I call them small L leaders because they haven't they're still leading from either a place of fear or ego,
Mm-hmm.
which is different than a leader who leads from their heart and from a place of love, because then they're first thinking about how they're showing up before they even engage with their employees. Like I have leaders that will check in with me or send me a text and go, I'm having a really bad day and I'm about to go into my team meeting. Can you give me some guidance or some kind of um
That's power.
support? And I'll send them like yeah, that was the word I'm looking for. Thank you. I'll send them some kind of silly, text, or I'll call them and just say, check in, how are you feeling? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you need to cancel the meeting, cancel the meeting. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you don't think you can move through how you're feeling right now, cancel the meeting and reschedule it. But if you have to go through with it, then set your intention for how you want this meeting to go and how you want to show up so that it's successful.
Yeah. Yeah. How often do you have, I mean, like, how often does that happen with your clients where, maybe they've got their own shit to deal with and they have to cancel a meeting because of that? Is that pretty common or is that on the rare?
Um, it's rare. It's
Yeah,
rare. But I offer that as a thing because I
sure.
think people need to know that they have options, right?
Sure.
That that I know leaders, I even know employees, people that I used to work with who would come to work when they didn't feel well. They would come to work after having a death in the family. And it's like,
Mhm.
you're not even fully 100% here right now. So, like, you shouldn't be engaging with anyone. You should be taking the time to be with your family, to be with yourself, or give yourself time to heal. So it's not like it's a frequent thing, but people just need to know that is an option. Just like I,
Yeah.
I laugh when leaders get CC'd on a meeting and they feel like they have to go to the meeting. And I'm like, no, you can actually if this meeting doesn't have anything to do with you and you think the person is either bringing you in to use you as some level of authority,
Sure.
um, or the message doesn't, the theme, the topic of the meeting doesn't have anything to do with you, you can actually decline it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super important, especially for leaders. If you're as a leader, you're expected to be making important decisions that adjust the course of the whole organization. I mean, I can speak for myself. I've got a 7-month-old. We just had a daughter in March, and she's
Uh,
wonderful. And she's wonderful and amazing. And there are nights where she doesn't sleep very much. And when she doesn't sleep
right,
very much, mom and dad don't sleep very much. And so
right,
there's been
exactly.
there's been a few. I've canceled a few podcasts and I've canceled a few team meetings because I've gotten 2-3 hours of sleep, and there's no
Right.
way that I can show up and be effective.
Exactly. But you recognize that. Because that was the thing you had when we were going to meet the first time. I thought that was awesome. I meant to tell you
Yeah.
that. I thought that was awesome that you did a self check and said, I'm not going to be full on. I'm not going to be my full self. So let's just reschedule this for another time. Like
I've had
so
to, yeah,
don't do that.
I've had to do that a few times, and I don't regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Because I'd much rather, reschedule that podcast. I apologize if it puts you or anyone else out,
Right.
but when we can do it, I can show up and I can ask intelligent questions and I can engage in intelligent conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
It yeah makes a better product. At any rate, circling back to you and your coaching business, where do you find your clients? How do you market your services?
Um, actually, I don't. I'm working. I have some coaching clients that come to me through word of mouth, and I have some coaching clients that I am working with a company and I
Hmm.
get assigned coaches. I like working with employees who are on their leadership development track.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm working with this specific company. Even though I'm working with leaders, they're at the beginning of their leadership journey.
Hmm.
And I love helping those leaders, new and emerging leaders,
Hmm.
become great leaders because they don't have the same baggage that people who have been in leadership for a long time,
Hmm.
and their title has now been attached to their ego and kind of a definition of who they are. So, I've had VPs that couldn't hear the message
Hmm.
because they were being forced to get coaching, and they didn't really want to be there. Whereas a manager who wants to be on the director track and may have also been sent to coaching for whatever reason, they seem to be more willing to receive the coaching because they understand that this is going to help them become better leaders so that they can get the promotion that they want.
You,
So yeah,
you can get them while they're fresh, while they're
I
easy to
can get
mold.
them while they're fresh. Right, exactly, where they're still moldable and can listen.
You mentioned in the kind of the application process for this podcast, you mentioned something that caught my eye and that I really resonated with me. You mentioned that you realized at some point that work-life balance is a fallacy. Can you talk more about that? I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Well, because your life is your life, right? So how are you going to have balance at work and balance in your life as if those are two separate things? I think that's part of the problem that people have in corporate America is they think they have this work self
Hmm.
that is completely disconnected from themselves, like who they are outside of the office. I say this a lot. I do teachable moments on social media on Thursdays, like today, and I usually share teachable moments about in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how, especially in that space, how people talk about creating diverse, equitable, inclusive spaces where people feel like they have a sense of belonging on paper. They create that vision on paper, but then they behave badly behind closed doors or when they're at home, right? So that means that they have this belief that their work self can behave one way, and then they can behave differently outside of the office. And I don't think we should make that distinction between the two. I think your life should have balance. You should have balance with your work. And boundaries. You should have balance and boundaries with your family and your relationships so that you always have time for yourself. Women specifically with families tend to put themselves on the back burner. I mean, I don't have like a family, I'm not married or have kids, but even as a single woman, I was giving a lot of energy to relationships and to work and to whatever outside of me things that I was doing. And I would look up and be depleted and couldn't understand how I got there. So I went on my own self-love journey, and I realized that the only way that we're successful is if we give ourselves time. Like if we intentionally, like Sunday is my day. It's my self-love Sunday, and I take care of me on Sunday. And on Saturday, sometimes I sleep, most times I sleep in, right? Because that's part of this balance, right? And when I am working, I don't eat at my desk. Like, especially working from home, you got to have boundaries. If I'm eating, I'm in the living room. This is my space. My office is where I work. My bedroom is where I sleep. And I know you shouldn't watch TV in bed, but that's where I like to enjoy that. And, that way, at least in this space, there's a balance, but it's a life balance and not a work-life balance. Does that make sense?
100%. I love the idea of taking work-life balance and bringing in, kick that out and bring in the double B, balance and boundaries. That's great. Boundaries are so important, and that's important in every arena, from your personal life to family life to your professional life. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Glodean, what does a typical engagement with you look like?
Say more. What do you mean? Like how?
So when you're working with a client, are you working with them so you do laser coaching, right? So it's going to be pretty short. Is that like a 1 month contract, or what does that look like usually?
I got it. It's usually 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
On a specific goal, right? So if you want to be a leader that is more influential, then we're going to spend that time only on that. We're not going to be trying to do 12 different things in this time period, so that you get and a lot of it is through experiment, right? So if you think you're influential, but you're hearing that you're not, so what are the things that you're doing right now that aren't working? All right, of those things, which can you just take one out and let's try it for a couple weeks and see how it goes? So if you're the person who tells people what they want to hear, which especially other leaders recognize that you're doing that, so you lose less credibility, right? Because they know you're not speaking your truth. So if that's one of the things that you need to get better at, then we're going to spend 2 weeks on you speaking your truth. And everything I think that we do in the space of personal growth creates some level of discomfort. And this should just be my mantra. Every time I speak, I feel like I say this: you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So most of my work is helping people get comfortable being uncomfortable. Sometimes we just sit. I haven't done this with a lot of people, but I've done it with people that I'm recognizing are being performative, working with me. And I will just say, okay, I need you to just stop for a second and let's just sit here. 30 seconds, no talking. You can see them squirming. Then I'll say, are you uncomfortable yet? And they'll go, I was uncomfortable when you told me to stop talking.
I was talking to help comfort myself.
And then I'll say, good. Okay, now we recognize that you're uncomfortable. Let's work with that. It's just acknowledging. I think if the more people can acknowledge, I am uncomfortable right now, and I don't like the way that makes me feel. You don't have to tell everybody. Just say it to yourself. I don't like the way it makes me feel. Shake it off. Okay. All right.
Like Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Now, how do I take this discomfort and do something positive with it? So, doing different exercises or experiments like that, having people practice at home,
Mm-hmm.
because again, connecting home and self, home and office,
Mm-hmm.
if you are someone who doesn't listen, like that's some feedback that you've gotten, start listening better at home. Stop talking so much and listen, because your family's going to notice. You're like, your family is going to be the one that tells you the truth in a way that your employees won't tell you, or your coworkers won't tell you. So your family's going to notice your improvement before anybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I worked with an organization a year or so ago, and they had a annual event that they invited me to, and the employees' spouses were coming to me and thanking me for helping their spouse communicate better or listen better, because they could see it,
Mm-hmm.
because they were being told to do it at home. Because again, you can't separate. You shouldn't. You don't do it successfully anyway, but you shouldn't even try to
Well,
separate.
certainly if you're learning a people skill for your professional life, why would you not bring that into your personal life as well?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what,
Good
what sorts
question.
of things? Yeah. What sorts of things did you struggle with when you first kind of started coaching?
Biggest one is not feeling like I needed to tell people what they should do.
Okay.
Um, I felt like if I saw that you were struggling with something and you couldn't get to it on your own, if I told you, that would help you. No, it doesn't help.
Mhm.
Um, you can ask guided questions to help people get to that answer, but telling them doesn't help them do the work. And that's where the growth is possible. So that was hard. And disconnecting myself from the results, like not being attached to the results. We're working together, and I cannot take it personally, and I cannot be so attached that you didn't do the thing that you said you were going to do, or not if you said, but you know, if we're talking, you're asking me for advice, I give you the advice and you go do something opposite.
Mhm.
That was hard for me sometimes to hear,
Mhm.
because I was like, well, what'd you ask me for? But then I also learned that the same thing was happening in my personal life, where people would ask for advice and then they didn't always do the thing that I suggested. So in coaching, it helped me realize that I could be just as disconnected from those results as I can from thinking that the people that I'm advising need to do exactly what I said, which creates a better um, experience for both of us. I think that sometimes, you know, we as human beings give someone advice and then we get mad if they don't take our advice. But
Mhm.
it's like they have the will to make their own choice. You're giving them an option. So see it as an option. That's what I had to keep telling myself. You're giving them an option. So stop feeling like they're not listening to you. You gave them an option. They made their decision based on the information that they had. So those were the two biggest things for me.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to remember that we as human beings don't like to be told what to do. We have that sense
Well,
of
exactly.
sovereignty and that sense of individuality.
Right. But yeah, well, this is true. But I felt like if you're asking me for advice, this was where I was drawing the line.
Yeah.
You're asking me for advice, and I'm stopping. And this, I'm just talking about my personal life. You're asking me for advice. I'm stopping what I'm doing to focus on you and give you
Uh-huh.
attention, then suggest what you should do, and then you go do the opposite. I would get mad about that. So when I started
Sure.
coaching, it was still in my head that they should do what I tell them to do.
Uh-huh.
They asked for my help, and so that's why it was hard, was making that distinction between
Yeah.
what was really happening.
I think with some conversations that I've had with other coaches, oftentimes that's where we'll draw like this kind of line in the sand between coaching and consulting. Where
Yeah,
coaching is you have to draw the answer out, and consulting you can
right.
just tell them the answer. But,
Exactly.
but they're very, very different things, right? And there's that line
Very, very good.
that separates them.
Yeah, very, very different. And I think that was part of the issue, is I had been a consultant for so long
Okay, yeah.
that I was used to,
Hmm.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. I no, I get it. I was a consultant for a number of years, and I'm a pretty great consultant. I'm not the best coach in the world. And my wife has since stopped asking me for advice.
Well, I also recognize that um making that shift from consultant to coach also made me a better listener, right? Because in order for me to help you help yourself, I have to really hear what you're saying and what you're not saying.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people um, don't know how to articulate what it is they're really trying to get at. And sometimes the root issue is underneath the thing they think is the issue. So if I'm listening, right, I'm hearing better so I can advise better and guide better.
I like it. I like it. Tell me a little bit about the difference between personality and character.
That's a great question. Um, Personality, I believe, is the suit, if you will, the outerwear. Character is what's going on underneath that suit.
Hmm.
So personality uh, is something that people lean into, as in, this is who I am, so deal with it. People define themselves by their job. So I'm a lawyer, and that's how come I'm always argumentative. And it's like, no, that's a personality. That's a persona that you've created
Hmm.
because it makes you feel a certain way. Character is something you get to develop and reshape and redefine every single day. And
Hmm.
character is about showing up as your best self for the sake of those that you're impacting. Character makes you care about how you show up for the people in your life, whether they're your employees or your coworkers or your family, right? So that you take that character is the thing that kicks in when you are coming home from a bad day and you sit in the driveway for a moment to get present that I'm going in the house right now and I don't want to bring this energy into the house and create havoc.
Hmm.
So so I think that's the distinction that I make. I mean, there's obviously the definition of the two, but I don't go by that. I'm going by how character and personality show up, because that's the thing I think people can connect with.
Yeah, that tracks. So personality is like the mask that you wear on the outside, kind of.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and character is being able to take that mask off and not caring. Oh my God, I just had a flashback. I'm sorry. I was pointing to my eye, but then did you see Austin Powers the one with Beyonce? I can't remember what it was called.
A million years ago.
So one of the characters had a mole on his face, and Austin Powers kept focusing on this gigantic mole.
Oh
And
yeah. Okay.
character is being able to be okay with that mole on your face, not try to hide it, right? Personality would try to cover it up in some way.
For those who don't get that, you'll have to watch Austin Powers.
Yeah, I can't even remember the name, whichever. Anyway,
They're all funny. Watch them
yeah.
all. Glodian, tell us about some big wins that you've had in your with your coaching and your clients.
Ooh. So my last 6 clients got promotions. So
Oh,
yay.
there you go.
2 of those found their voice. Like they were afraid to ask for what they wanted. And they were kind of standing on the sideline waiting for it to be given to them.
Mm,
And they found the courage to ask, and then all of a sudden found themselves on this track, this development track, headed toward promotion. So that made me really happy. And one of my clients told me yesterday how she appreciates having worked with me, because she feels like she had been standing on the outside of her career watching things happen, and that now she's like in the driver's seat in full control, and she feels the difference, but everyone around her also sees the difference in her, and she's having different relationships, which I think is beautiful. um I think any client that I've ever worked with has had some level of transformation, be it big or small, and have become more self-aware and self-reflective, not in a performative way. I have to keep saying that because we toss around authenticity a lot, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like authenticity can be performative, whereas my clients are moving into that space of getting real, if that makes sense. So I'd say those are my biggest ones. Um, I mean, I've had a lot, but those are the most recent ones.
So you just mentioned authenticity can be performative, and you were speaking earlier in our conversation about speaking your truth. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between those two things? Because a lot of people, I think, might hear speaking your truth and authenticity and think that it sounds like the same thing, right?
Right.
Being yourself, being who you are, being authentic, speaking your truth. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so authenticity from the place of being who you are means you have to really know who you are.
Mm.
You can't be in this persona of I am X based on what other people expect of you, because that's not authentic, right? So if you've created this self that's based on everybody else's input, then you're not really being authentic. You're being performative in that role that you've created for yourself.
Mm.
Um, Speaking your truth means that when you're in a meeting and a leader says something that you know is impossible to do, you're
Mm.
not going to be on the sideline like everyone else, afraid to say that's not going to work, right? I remember when I was still working in corporate America, I was a project manager and I had this multi-million-dollar network implementation to do.
Mm.
And everyone in my company, I was new at the company, and everybody was telling me that our client doesn't like to hear no. Like, don't tell him no. And I was like, okay, but no, I'm not going to do that. And we were in a meeting, and like everyone, this is like we would have these weekly project planning meetings because I was just responsible for a portion of this multi-million-dollar project, but mine was like really big. And the client asked me to do something that I knew wasn't possible.
Mm.
Uh, and so I said, I never say no. I said, I can't do that. And he cut me off before I could finish my sentence and said, well, didn't anybody tell you I don't like to hear no? And I looked around the room. I said, everybody in here told me that. But did they tell you I'm not going to commit to something I can't do? And he said, oh, I said, so what I was going to say is I can't do that, but I can do this. And then we can whatever the thing was. And
Sure.
he said, oh, yeah. And we, in that moment, that was the beginning of our relationship. We're still friends today. I don't even work at that company anymore.
Yeah.
Um, because I spoke truth, right? And I think and I'm going to make a distinction, speaking truth with loving kindness,
Huh?
because speaking truth through anger does not land well with
Sure.
people. Speaking truth through sarcasm or speaking truth through some other divisive mechanism is not. Getting real means speaking your truth with loving kindness so that you can be heard. So I think that's the difference. If you are truly comfortable in your skin and who you are is genuinely your design, and
Mhm.
you are living in your purpose, meaning that you are more committed to being the best version of yourself, then you are being authentic. But I think even in that space, you've gotten real, because you've gotten real with yourself to let go of whatever personas or creations, machinations, I don't know, that you've created to be something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah, completely. And I think the other thing that you did in that conversation, and speaking as a leader myself, leaders love this, is you came with a solution, right? So
Right.
you spoke your truth. You're honest, like, I can't do that. Here's what I can do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you offered an alternative. You didn't just bring him a problem. You
Right.
explained the problem and you brought him a solution. And that can make all the difference as well. Especially for a leader, if people are just bringing them problems all day long and not offering alternatives or solutions, it can be quite difficult for everybody, but stressful for the leader for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see here. So, okay, we talked about your big wins. Tell us about some times where you maybe haven't met your goals, where you've failed, and the things that you've learned from those failures.
Recent. um, so like I said, I'm working with the coaching company for some of my clients, and they match you up with people, so you don't have that initial kind of intake call to see if it's going to be a good fit.
Mm.
So I was having my own intake calls before we actually start the engagement, kind of a 30-minute, get to know each other, see if this is going to work.
Sure.
And I tell everybody this before we get started, and I told this particular candidate that this was our meet and greet, and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an opportunity to see if this is a good fit. And if this doesn't work for you, I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So, you can my feelings won't be hurt if this isn't a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped him understand the app and walk through the whole process. And he complained to the coaching company a couple of weeks later that I wasn't prepared for our call. Like everything that he said was punitive and made it seem like I didn't know what I was doing, right? And I feel like the point of failure was taking all that feedback that I got personally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't separate what I had said to him directly from his take on our conversation, right? Because there's 3 sides to every story: my side, his side, and the truth of what actually happened. And so I as much work as I've done not to take things personally, I took it personally before I could hear that he just didn't have the courage to say he didn't want to work with me, even though I gave him an out. Yeah. All you have to do is say, I don't want to work with her. I wouldn't have been hurt. But the hurtful part was to add the untruths, right? That felt like they were discrediting me or questioning my capability and intellect. And I had a problem with that. So and that's the most recent, and I'm calling it a failure just because it was an opportunity to learn and grow. Yeah. I feel like that I don't necessarily look at certain things as failures, but yeah.
What was your takeaway from that whole situation?
That he was entitled to his whatever he needed to do to get out of that. He was entitled to his way of doing it, right? Just because that's not the way I would have done it, that's the way it made him feel more comfortable. And it doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
Right. If I was his coach, he'd never do that again, though, because I'd coach him out of that. Because that right there is performative authenticity, as opposed to being real and just saying, can I have another coach?
Yeah. He's entitled to his shitty opinion.
Exactly.
Shitty though it may be. Glodean, what are 3 books that you would recommend your clients to read? Or that you do actively recommend your clients to read?
The Alchemist.
That's a great one.
And there's 2 of them by Brene Brown, but Dare to Lead is the one that touched me the most. And then my favorite, Steve Farber, wrote this book called Love is Just Damn Good Business. But I don't know if I could pick one of Steve's books. The first of his books that I read was The Radical Leap, which was written more like a fable, if you will, a corporate leadership learning journey kind of thing.
Sure.
But I'd say Love is just, right now, lately, I've been recommending Love is Just Damn Good Business. But then he's got another one called Greater Than Yourself, which is about leading, mentorship and leading. Like you should be a mentor.
That's great. If I may say so, Love is Just Damn Good Business is just a damn good name for a book.
Right?
That's so
Right?
good. That's so good. I'm going to Amazon after we hang up on this Zoom call
Excellent.
and ordering
Excellent.
that book.
Excellent.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Glodean, this has been great. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to talk about that we just haven't had an opportunity to touch upon?
No, not that I can think of.
Everything. It's literally everything.
I think we had we covered a lot of ground. I love it.
Love it. Awesome. Glodean, do you have anything that you would like to pitch or promote to our listeners and viewers?
Ooh, so many things. That's like a loaded question. I'm gonna start with the thing that's near and dear to my heart. It's a novel, my novel that I wrote, Salmon Croquettes. And the reason that I think this is I wouldn't even pitch it in any other business space, but I have been told by so many people that this is a great learning tool. It's the coming of age story of a young girl struggling with her sexuality. It's set in 1965 because it's also historical fiction about the Watts riots. But what it seems to be doing for people is helping them understand how difference and kind of, I don't know. I will say the best review I've gotten so far said that my novel is a catalyst for change, greater understanding, and love. I don't know how else like that. What? That was like, all right.
Beauty, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think it helps people, opens their minds and hearts and helps them be more appreciative and accepting. And then my safe to ask and leadership development coaching in the space of for diverse leaders. Those are the two most important coaching programs that I'm actively sharing with people these days, because we need to move through all this divisiveness of race so that we can be better for each other and to each other.
And presumably people can go to your website, GlodeanChampion.com, to learn more about those?
Yes.
Perfect. And your book, is it available on Amazon?
My book is available wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold. I love
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll get links to, of course, your website. We'll include links to the books that you recommended in your book as well, of course. Where can people find you on social media?
LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And people keep telling me I need to do my teachable moments on TikTok. So I may start that soon.
I'm gonna double down on that. You absolutely should.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on my marketing soapbox and say that you absolutely should. TikTok is still a growing platform, and you can get attention at a discount on TikTok.
Okay. All right.
Instagram has so many advertisers; it's more expensive on Instagram. But TikTok, trust me.
Okay.
You'll never.
I received that. I will do that.
I love it. You'll never regret it. Awesome. Glodean Champion, thank you so much for joining me on the Remarkable Coach podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael. This was a great conversation.
I love it. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining us as well. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Bye.